Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 2 of Bushcraft Basics, and in this episode we're going to be talking about location. Now what I mean by that is the location in which you want to start practicing your bushcraft skills. As we discussed in the first episode, the area where I was brought up was in the Outer Hebrides off the northwest coast of Scotland. Now for those of you that don't know, I'll put a picture up here somewhere, but it's an island. It's an island off the west coast. Very, very barren, there's no trees, and there isn't really a huge variety of plant life to speak of. That's where I got into bushcraft and primitive living skills, and the skills I learnt there wouldn't be as applicable as to where I am now. Where I am now, obviously, is on the mainland, mainland as we call it, mainland Scotland, and as you can see, in an entirely different environment, and entirely different skills to match. So the area you're based, and this is something only you can kind of assess and go out and decide on what it is you need to do to sort of prepare yourself for the environment you're in, whether you're living in the US somewhere, whether you're living in the UK, in England somewhere, or whether you're living on an island somewhere, wherever it might be. The skills you're going to need to learn are very different, but the basics, the very, very basics remain fairly similar, and regardless of your geographical location, there will be sort of things that we can cross over and can be used. There's kind of an underlying constant when it comes to the skills needed for bushcraft as a beginner, and they can be transferred to just about anywhere in the world. I've travelled a fair bit, and you know, the skills are always kind of the same no matter where I've gone. Yes, plant species change, the weather changes, but the skills needed tend to stay very, very similar. So as a beginner, going out and finding a place where you feel comfortable to do something like this, to set up a fire, is probably, at least from what I've heard, it wasn't my experience, but from what I've heard, it's one of the most daunting kind of aspects. I know a lot of people from all over the country who struggle to have their own space to be able to go out and practice their skills, or to set up a shelter like I have here. And it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the world we're living in now, where wilderness is becoming very, very small and few and far between, and where they are, people tend to want to look after them or make use of them themselves, so a lot of private spaces. Up here in Scotland, I'm very fortunate in that that's not the case, and we have the right to roam up here, which enables us to move freely across the land, even over private land, but we have to stick to some rules, i.e., you know, not damaging property, not making a mess, not loitering around or being a nuisance, and not staying there for extended amounts of time or days. And where you are might have laws that kind of work around that. Scotland is the only place in the UK I know of that has that rule, that right to roam. England, Wales and Ireland are different as far as I'm aware, in that private land is private land and you cannot go on it. That being said, I think there's a lot of worry out there when it comes to just going out and finding a spot of woods and making the most of it. Now when you turn up to the woods as a beginner, you're not going to be setting up a huge fireplace, you're not going to be setting up a big shelter. What I would recommend you do is go out and find a woodland where you can sit and be comfortable and not be worried that people are going to show up to move you on, and that if people do come past, they're friendly. It's just somewhere you feel comfortable. And again, this isn't something I can really teach you. I can teach you how to look for it perhaps, but I can't teach you what that will feel like. This is something only you can go out and discover for yourself. Now I tend to live by the old adage that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, and I've always found that is usually the case when it comes to getting people outdoors. You know, go out, find a place, and if someone does come across, explain to them what you're doing, explain to them why you're interested in what it is you're doing. Don't be afraid. Some things that help kind of alleviate worry is having a dog. You know, bringing your dog with you, having that company there. Maybe arrange a trip with one of your friends or a group of friends and go out and explore a new place together. But there's There's a lot of kind of different ways you can set yourself up. Don't go out there with loads of kit. You don't need it because you're a beginner, and you don't need to be worrying about that at this moment in time. What you need to be worrying about is being able to go out into the woods and feel comfortable, to feel like this is your space and you can do with it as you please and not have to worry. Now obviously, it goes without saying, there's an element of give and take there. When you go into the woods, please do not go out and leave litter everywhere, or leave big holes, or leave trees that have been kind of half cut down, or anything like that. I know, as people that are into bushcraft, people that are watching this, you probably aren't that sort of people anyway, but just it's always, it's better to be safe than sorry in saying that. Just always kind of pay nature the respect it deserves. So let's talk about finding a location. So it's okay saying, yes, okay, we'll go out and do what you want and be free and all the rest of it. But finding a location, what's the best way to go about actually finding a spot of woods that might be applicable to somewhere you can use? The internet is your friend in that sense. If you don't have access to the internet, the library is obviously very good. If you can get access to maps or even books of local walks in your area, again, fantastic resource. Not something that's used so much these days in the modern world where we have the internet all the time, but definitely something that should be looked at. So what I tend to do personally when I'm looking for a new spot is I pull up Google Maps. Other map services are available, but I pull up Google Maps, and what I do is turn it onto satellite mode. For those of you that aren't kind of full into their tech, you can find tutorials on this online, but put it into satellite mode and that'll show you where the trees are and what the area is like around it, where water is, where rivers are, and all the rest of it, what access is like. Have a look at your local area and then find woods that are nearby. Now don't make them so far away that they're a struggle to get to and you can't get back. I always advise that you go somewhere that's within walking distance. That way, you don't have to worry about losing your bus ticket or losing your train ticket or losing your wallet in the woods and not being able to get home and then winding up, stuck in the woods. My advice, always go to somewhere where you can walk. Now, it doesn't have to be a big woods like this. It could be just a little patch of woods. It could be a public trail. Public trails are really good in the sense that they tend to lead you through different kind of little micro ecosystems in that environment. So you might walk through a woods and then come out next to a river and then off up to a lake or whatever it might be. They're really good because they open you up to different plants, different animals that are around, and that's what we're going to be looking at kind of further on down the line. It's those plants and animals you're going to be making use of. So Google Maps is your friends when it comes to seeking out location. Now, what sort of location would I advise? For me personally, as you can see, I'm in a coniferous woodland. It's probably a plantation, an old plantation. We've got a lot of spruce, we've got a lot of birch. Now, for the beginner guys amongst us, you're not going to know what they are really. But if you're looking at maps, you'll get coniferous and you'll get deciduous woods. Coniferous woods, like the ones I'm in now, will be marked on the map as that. Deciduous are different trees, they're hardwoods and they're not as useful. So, as a very, very basic understanding of trees, you've got coniferous and you've got deciduous. Look for coniferous. That's where you want to be, is in the coniferous woods. Plantations are usually always really good because they're always pine or spruce or larch. And as we go down the line, you'll come to realise that those trees, the trees I've surrounded myself with here, are a really, really important resource, and you're going to learn about them and you're going to learn how to use them. Now, that's not to say, well, that's where you should go and that's all you should do. Go to some deciduous woods, go to where you have oak and where you have ash, and alder and all that sort of stuff, and just take it all in. Again, you're not there to become the master bushcrafter in a day. You're there just to soak it in, just to take in what's around you and try and just get a feel for it. Now, for those of you that are by the coast is an amazing place. Saying that as someone who grew up on an island, it's an amazing place for foraging. It's an amazing place for kind of discoveries and resources. but it's a very harsh place. So if you do have a beach or something near you and you want to get into kind of coastal bushcraft, go down to your local beach, just have a walk around. But don't do what most people would do. And what I mean by that is walk from one end of the beach to the other end of the beach with the dog and then get in the car and go home. What I would suggest you do is go off the beaten track a wee bit. You know, explore, climb over some rocks, climb up into sand dunes, you know, whatever it might be. Obviously being careful and using a bit of common sense. But just have a look around. Go somewhere where you don't normally go and just kind of explore. Now, that being said, what I will say is whenever you go anywhere, and even now, you know, at 24 years old, having done this for several years, I still always tell someone where I'm going, so they know where I am. They usually have an idea of what time I'm going to be back by and what it is I'm aiming to achieve while I'm there, and that is super important. I can't stress that enough. As a beginner, if you get into trouble out in the woods, it can turn pretty bad pretty quickly. So always let someone know where you're going, leave contact details. Even if you have a map, you know, leave a copy of the map with your location on it, you know, as to where you're going, even a rough location. You know, you don't have to be an expert map reader to be able to go, well, I'm going to this woods here. Super important. I can't stress that enough. Now, that's going to lead us on to our next video. Our next video is going to be about kit, and on the kit front, I think what we'll start off with is going to be clothes. I was going to do knives and tools and stuff, but I kind of came to the idea that clothes would be better. As a good buddy of mine, Joe Price, says, you know, that they're your first layer of protection. They are your shelter. They're your personal shelter when you're out in nature. And that, to me, is more important than a knife or a saw. Okay, so we're going to have a look just at some beginner clothing. What I started out with, we'll talk a bit about what I started out with. What I would recommend now, having progressed my skills and kind of changed my comfort level through the years, you know, and as you progress, you'll change yourself. But that's kind of what we're going to look into next, and then tools and stuff will follow on after that. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I know the first 2 episodes have been kind of just me talking and expressing, you know, my opinions and ideas and stuff like that, but I hope you found them helpful. I can't stress enough, do your research, look into where you're going, you know, have an idea in your head about why it is you're wanting to do this and what makes you want to do it and pursue it, and then just kind of keep that in mind when you're actually following out the task. So I look forward to seeing you all in the next one, episode 3, where it's going to be about clothes. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll catch up with you again soon.